Harbiya.
Such familiar sights. Greetings once again, Baghdad. Show me what I have missed.
Baghdad's unwashed and unsung lived in the Harbiya district, where the runoff of industry ended up, a busy area that was dull and grim with soot and the debris of hard work. It was also home to the notorious Damascus Gate prison, a veritable tomb for those who fell afoul of the Caliph's favor. Emporium of the World. In Baghdad's bazaars, one could find almost all the products of the known world. Chroniclers wonder at items such as Russian foxskins, Indian sandalwood, or Byzantine goldwork, but most trade involved rather less prestigious precious commodities. Food staples such as grain, rice, or dates, alongside delicacies such as almonds or sugar, made up the bulk of the loads and shipment. Trade routes also supplied Baghdad with an extensive selection of manufactured goods, from exotic Chinese porcelain to more common Egyptian glass. The style of some of them, such as the Chinese-inspired tricolored splashed decoration of this plate, were then copied throughout the empire. Nestled in the midst of these wares were some truly expensive products, which wealthy elites from Scandinavia to China craved: Omani ambergris or African ivory. Most merchants did not specialize in any one type of item, but rather tried to acquire at a low cost whatever commodity they thought they could sell from a profit elsewhere. They then put together their haul in bales, baskets, and ceramic containers, loaded them onto beasts of burden or ships, and ventured to the nearest regional market. With the important exception of the Sogdian traders who ran and managed the various routes of the Silk Roads, merchants rarely went further than a few days away from their home. Besides some extremely important trade hubs such as Baghdad, Samarkand, or Bukhara, the presence of travelers from faraway lands would therefore have been a rare sight, but their goods could be sold and resold all across Eurasia. The Banu Musa brothers. Sons of an astronomy expert and highwayman from eastern Iran, the Banu Musa brothers grew up at the Caliphal court. Skilled political operators, generous scientific patrons, and prolific inventors, they are a perfect example of the elite scholars living in 9th century Baghdad. The brothers' father, Musa ibn Sakir, befriended then Prince al-Mamun, 813 to 833, while he was governor of Khorasan, eastern Iran and Uzbekistan. Through his connection, the sons of Musa, Muhammad, Ahmed, and al-Hassan were able to receive an elite education after the death of their father. Studying with the mathematician and astronomers of the House of Wisdom, they acquired multiple scientific, technical, and linguistic skills. They participated in al-Khwarizmi's calculation of the circumference of the Earth, paid for manuscript buying trips to the Byzantine Empire, and published 20 books on various subjects. The most important was the Kitab al-Hiyal, Book of Ingenious Devices, that presented detailed and illustrated depictions of 100 mechanical devices such as automatic fountains and musical instruments, which applied simple concepts of pressure and water to wonderful effect. Others were trick vessels like this jar that separates wine from water. Their personal connections to the caliphs helped them secure important and wealthy positions as architects and city planners responsible for canal construction. Muhammad even participated in the complex negotiations to choose a new caliph after the deaths of al-Mutawakkil, 847 to 861, and his son al-Muntasir, 861 to 62. Alcohol production and consumption. Islamic law prohibited alcohol consumption because it altered the mind and caused wrongful behavior. It was therefore considered a major sin. However, Abbasid religious scholars discussed the precise scope of this ban. Some interpreted it as a full ban on all alcohol consumption, while others limited to excessive consumption, public drunkenness, or only to alcohol made from fruits, grapes, dates, etc., as opposed to mead or beer, for example. In practice, alcohol was nonetheless consumed, as proved by numerous accounts and drinking vessels, including one pictured here whose inscription reads, "Drink, blessings from God to the owner of the goblet." Alcohol was even a major topic of poetry in a genre of literary works called the Kamriyat, which was dedicated to the praise of wine, intoxication, and the pleasures of the table. These accounts establish that alcohol was consumed at every level of society, including by clergymen and high-level officials. It seems that the issue of alcohol and its prohibition was possibly more focused on public drunkenness, which could lead to police intervention, while there was probably a higher degree of tolerance for drinking in private areas. The main producers of alcohol seem to have been the non-Muslim members of the Abbasid society. Most of them did not follow the same religious restriction and brewed or vinified what they consumed. Monasteries were among the most famous winemakers. They were forbidden to sell any of it to their Muslim neighbors, but many stories of inebriated visits to the monks and even bottles sporting representations of priests seems to indicate that the law was not followed by everybody.
God. Though I will admit, some of my old skills have served me well in performing his work.
I can respect a warrior who has found a higher calling. What is your need?
I seek a holy man, buried in one of the older, overgrown graves.
Maritime trading. The Indian Ocean trade routes connected Baghdad to East Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and China. Faster to cross the land ones, they were also fraught with danger. Akbar as-Sin wal Hind, accounts from China and India, describes the travel of one Suleiman al-Tajir, the merchant, and other unnamed explorers across the Indian Ocean between 850 and 910. The 5-month journey took them from Baghdad to Guangzhou, through Oman, southern India, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Along the way, Suleiman and his peers traded fine clothes and coins for Indian ambergris, Indonesian spices, and Chinese porcelain. They also noticed the presence of Muslim and Christian communities in many ports and commented on the food and customs of these foreign lands. The discovery in 1998 of an Arabian shipwreck dated from 830 near the Indonesian island of Belitung confirmed much of the information related in the Akbar as-Sin wal Hind and the impressive global reach of the Abbasid trading networks. These maritime travelers could be dangerous. Rudimentary astronomical instruments made coastal navigation the only option, and reefs claimed many boats. The vessels themselves were surprisingly frail, with uncaulked planks sewn together with coconut fibers rather than nailed. More efficient building methods existed on the Mediterranean shores, but the much higher cost of iron in the western Indian Ocean led to the survival of the region's traditional watercraft. Only disastrous encounters with 15th century Chinese junks and Portuguese caravels forced shipbuilders to alter their plans.
Where exactly will I find this treasure?
My mother, a potter by trade, hid it inside a blue lusterware amphora.
Lusterware? That is a treasure in itself.
Ceramics and lusterwares. To accommodate the court's taste for elaborate luxuries, Iraqi potters experimented with new techniques, colors, and styles in their creations. Their most important innovation was luster painting, which created a glittering effect so popular that it went on to be exported and copied everywhere from Portugal to Thailand. One of the many sources of inspiration for Abbasid artisans were Chinese wares, especially white and blue porcelain brought to Iraq by boat in the 9th century. Their hardness, translucency, and whiteness were at the time revolutionary in that region. They enjoyed immense prestige among the wealthy. Iraqi potters attempted to meet this demand for Chinese imports by direct imitation, coating their usual brown earthenware in a white tin or lead-based substance before adding decorative colored glazes. However, Abbasid potters soon began attempting modifications to produce their own style, adding motifs inspired by local vegetation such as palm trees and meadow plants. More importantly, Iraqi potters started to experiment with an entirely new technique, luster painting. This involved preparing a special overglaze by blending silver or copper oxides with a carrier such as ochre, and then mixing this fine powder with vinegar and gum. This mix was painted onto an already glazed pot and fired in a special reduced oxygen kiln. If done right, this complicated and costly technique created an incredible metallic sheen. The result was almost alchemical, with simple earth appearing to have been transformed into silver or gold. Expansion of Islam through trade. Islam spread much farther than the limits of the Caliph's territory. In Southeast Asia, China, West Africa, and the Swahili coast, Muslim merchants played a decisive role in the expansion of Islam. The proliferation of faith followed traditional commercial routes through the Sahara, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean. In Guangzhou, on the Malabar coast, Muslims built mosques for their own religious needs that remain today as some of the oldest in existence, like this one in Kilwa, Tanzania. but it is the nature of Islam that fostered its spread to their trading partners. Born in the commercial society of Mecca and preached by a prophet reported to have been a merchant of ethical and practical prescripts useful for business activities, this code helped to sanction and control commercial relationships and offered a unifying ideology among the members of different ethnic groups, thus providing security and trust, two of the chief requirements for long-distance trade. From Ghana to Malaysia, local leaders permitted Islam in the hope that it would be beneficial for trade. Some were also motivated to establish closer diplomatic ties with the powerful Islamicate states or to provide religious justification for their rule. In any case, by the 15th century, Islam had spread, largely through peaceful means, to locales in Africa and Southeast Asia.
God curse you. No respect for authority.
سمعت أحدهم يلقبونني الأمين بسبب لا أغش أبدا يا صديقي. لا حرج من ارتداء الحرير مع أنه
A difficult succession. At the death of a caliph, another one succeeded him immediately, but sometimes deciding who that other would be was a complicated and dangerous task. The Abbasid Empire possessed clear rules about succession. Any male member of the ruling family could in theory become caliph, as long as he commanded the support of enough key elements of the government. After the passing of a ruler, a power struggle could therefore ensue between the various candidates and their partisans in the army of the administration. The harem, where the caliph's family and children lived and where he usually spent his last days, was another important factor in these scrambles. The reigning caliph usually tried to nominate his successor. He could choose any of his male relatives, but often favored one of his sons if he had any. He then attempted to ensure that his chosen candidate would receive the support he needed by shoring up his key position in the army and by having key members of the government and the Abbasid family take religious oaths to respect his decision. He would sometimes include the name of this chosen heir on coins struck by him. When the caliph had been a respectable and powerful figure, these measures would usually suffice, but if not, or if his chosen successor was a divisive figure, a child, one of many brothers, nothing prevented the soldier and the administration from trying to push for another candidate. After the reign of al-Mutawakkil, 847 to 861, caliphal succession became more heavily contested than it had been in the early days of the dynasty. A coin issued during the reign of al-Mu'tadi, 869 to 870, shows that succession did not always go according to plan. In addition to al-Mu'tadi's name, his coin includes traces of the names of the previous caliph, al-Mu'taz, 866 to 869, and the name of his son and then apparent heir, Abd Allah, who never became caliph.
Do you understand?
Yes, of course. Perish the idea.
Greeks bearing gifts. The Abbasids' power made them major players in the diplomatic and geostrategic game from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, from Tang China to Corallinian France. High-ranking officials came to Baghdad bearing lavish gifts with high hopes of forming an alliance. History records the name of numerous ambassadors sent to the Abbasid court for one reason or another. One was Yang Liangyao, a Chinese eunuch who came to Baghdad to negotiate an alliance in 785. Another was Georgios I of Makuria, a Sudanese prince sent to negotiate tribute owed by his father's kingdom to the caliphate. A third was John Radinos, a Byzantine admiral who came to negotiate peace and pay ransom for captured soldiers in 917. Each brought gifts of silk, ivory, or precious manuscripts to offer to the caliph himself, or to the high officials who controlled access to him. The Abbasids also sent emissaries of their own. Between 797 and 809, no less than 3 diplomatic envoys brought tokens of friendship from Harun al-Rashid to Charlemagne, displaying Abbasids' imperial power and technological prowess. They are said to have offered their new ally an elaborate water clock made of brass on which 12 small horsemen would move around at the end of each hour, as well as an elephant named Abul Abbas.
There it is, as cruel and unforgiving as I remember.
You were once imprisoned here.
Oh no, I have never been inside.
Prisons. At least 7 prisons existed in Baghdad, holding anywhere from a few dozen to a few hundred prisoners each. Being condemned to spend time in any of these overpopulated jails was considered one of the worst forms of punishment possible, and there are multiple recorded examples of inmates begging to receive corporeal punishments instead. Most prisoners were debtors. The pressures of a life in prison were designed to make them pay what they owed to the state or to other individuals. Inside, they met all kinds of felons, from petty thieves to people convicted of public drunkenness. Criminal offenders were rarely held in prison, as most serious crimes, murder, treason, repeated blasphemy, were punished by death. Some prisoners lived in awful conditions, but this depended on class and rank. Underpaid guards stole what they could from them, including the already insufficient rations of food and water awarded to the Caliphal administration. Violence between detainees and the mass use of restraint, which, for instance, prevented standing from prayer, were other terrible aspects of life in an Abbasid jail. Women had their own jails in which conditions were just as bad. Worse still, existed political and religious opponents that the caliphs dared not execute were often sent to the mutbakh, a prison made of deep wells. There they would await death in total silence and darkness. Gates of Baghdad. From its foundation, Baghdad was surrounded by walls which protected its inhabitants against invaders and sandstorms. A series of large gates allowed military, processional, and commercial transit through these impressive fortifications. The city's most striking feature was its round layout. The circular design was inspired by newer cities founded in the 7th century and by ancient cities like Gur or Vin Ardashir, founded by Sasanian kings, centuries before Caliph al-Mansur created Baghdad. By the 10th century, Baghdad had outgrown the original round city, and it was abandoned, because of the destruction of the city by the Mongols in 1258 and the subsequent urbanistic development on the top of the ruins. No archaeological evidence of it remains. The circular inner city could be accessed through 4 equidistant gates. Each led to a different region or city of the empire and took its name from its destination: Kufa to the southwest, Barsa to the southeast, Khorasan, eastern Iran and Uzbekistan to the northeast, and Sham, Syria to the northwest. Many more gates dotted the outside walls. Most took their names from a feature or an activity performed in the vicinity, like a pomegranate market or a mill. Some were known for their famous events that they hosted. As in other cities of the empire, the Iron Gate was thus called because it served as the gibbet on which the heads of traitors were displayed as a warning to others. Most famously, Caliph al-Amin's head, 809 to 813, after his defeat in the Civil War. Pillars of Islam. Today, Islam is widely understood to be based on 5 pillars, core beliefs and practices that are shared to some degree by every Muslim. The first is monotheism and the assertion of it by the Shahada, a declaration that there is no God but God and that Muhammad is his prophet. To become a Muslim, one simply has to recite this statement with conviction. The second pillar is prayer, performed 5 times a day at set times. The prayer starts with ritual ablutions of the hands, faces, and feet. Then, at the call of the muezzin, caller, Muslims turn towards Mecca and recite verses of the Quran, either out loud or silently, while adopting a series of set positions. They can pray anywhere, but should attend, if they can, a public prayer every Friday in a mosque to experience a feeling of fellowship. The third is almsgiving of a set amount of one's wealth in order to support less fortunate members of the community. The fourth is fasting from the first to the last light of the day during the holy month of Ramadan. It is considered a period of introspection on one's real needs and of openness to and compassion for the less fortunate. Finally, every Muslim who should make a pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in their life, dressing in the same humble white clothes as their fellow pilgrims to emphasize everyone's equality. The 5 pillars are alluded to in the Quran and in anecdotes about the life of the Prophet Muhammad. However, the details of their application have evolved over time, giving way to small differences in the practice of Islam between various Muslim groups. Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca. Once in their life, every Muslim who is physically and financially able to do so is enjoined to carry out a pilgrimage to Mecca, Islam's holiest city. This Hajj takes place only once a year, in the 12th and final month of the Islamic lunar calendar. It commemorates events linked to the life of Prophet Ibrahim, his son Ismail, and the latter's mother Hajar. According to Islamic beliefs, in Mecca they rebuilt a temple, the Kaaba or the Cube, which had been created by angels to venerate God and was visited by Adam and Eve, parents of humanity. Over the 5 days of the Hajj, Muslims perform a series of rituals meant to pay tribute to God on the site of his first temple and to symbolize their unity with other believers. All dressed in the same humble white clothes, the pilgrims move in harmony around the Kaaba, symbolically refuse the devil's temptation by throwing pebbles at pillars, and share meals. Crossing thousands of kilometers of desert and mountainous trails to reach Mecca was a tough and dangerous undertaking for pilgrims coming from all over the Muslim world. Finding and transporting clean water was of special importance, and flasks like these were precious possessions for any pilgrim. One of the main tasks of any caliph was therefore to assist them by maintaining traveling infrastructures, offering supplies and patrolling roads. The most famous of these charitable works is Zubayd's Trail, a network of milestones, wells, fire signals, and caravanserais founded by the first wife of Caliph Harun al-Rashid, 786 to 809. Khalila and Dimna. Caliph's sons were raised in the harem, away from the world they might come to rule. Many means existed to educate them about it, from tutors to special administrative jobs. Among them was the so-called Mirror of Princes, literary genre, in which lessons were offered through parables. The most famous example is Khalila wa Dimna. This collection of fables tells the story of a king, Deb Shleem, who seeks the counsel of the wise Bidpai on matters of statesmanship and court politics. The old man responds with interwoven stories featuring animals, in particular the 2 jackals Khalila and Dimna, who attempts to gain admission into the Lion King's inner circle through the telling of clever animal tales. Khalila wa Dimna's creation followed the same path as many other texts of the time. The text first appeared in a 3rd century BCE Indian text called the Panchantra and was translated from a Middle Persian version into Arabic around 750. New elements were added at each step. The translator Ibn al-Muqaffa was a prolific writer and one of the most notable intellectuals in the Abbasid court, producing both translations and original works. His corpus not only introduced Indian and Persian works to a popular audience, but also preserved them for future generations. Khalila wa Dimna has since inspired many other collections of stories, from Machiavelli's The Prince to the Fables de La Fontaine, and still widely read today.
Get back here, dog!
Abbasid Revolution. The Abbasids came to power following a revolution, 747 to 750, during which family members descended from Prophet Muhammad's uncle al-Abbas led Arab dissenters largely composed of troops from Iraqi and Khorasani regiments against the Umayyad Caliph in Damascus. Of particular import was the military leader Abu Muslim, a general of either Iraqi or Persian descent, whose prowess on the battlefield eventually led to the toppling of the reigning dynasty. The Umayyad dynasty had been caliphs since 661. As a result of the rapid expansion of the empire in the ensuing years, tensions arose between local peoples and the Umayyad administrators in the 740s. The Umayyad Empire was significantly challenged by North African peoples. The massive number of troops sent to these western lands in a failed attempt to reassert caliphal authority in the region aided the Abbasid revolution in the east. The notables of the Eastern Empire who were unhappy with the reigning dynasty, specifically their tax policies, indeed took advantage of the weakened Umayyad military position to attack its Syrian heartlands, the power base of the dynasty. With fewer troops available, the Umayyad center of Damascus soon fell to Abu Muslim's troops after the Battle of Zab, Iraq, in 750. After the victory, the newly installed Abbasid caliphs struggled with what to do with the dangerously popular hero of the revolution. Eventually, to secure his power, Caliph al-Mansur, 754-755, had the troublesome Abu Muslim assassinated. The Abbasid dynasty, however, continued to rely on its Persian power base, a fact reflected both in the move to the capital to a more eastern city, Baghdad, as well as in the choice of the top administrators of the empire.